The key thing, I think, about the other key takeaway from those pictures was that there was no communications secretary or representative from William's team, either private secretary or press secretary. And I think that gives a very clear insight into Harry's acknowledgement, and perhaps even Buckingham Palace and the King's acknowledgement, that as far as any kind of breakthrough with William is concerned, there, at the moment, as things stand now, zero prospect of that.
Well, Harry's lot didn't even try.
And zero desire
didn't even,
from
yeah,
William's
didn't even.
side. Hello and welcome back to The Royals, where we delve into the people, the politics and the pageantry of the British monarchy. I'm Roya Nikkhah from the Sunday Times.
And I'm Kate Mansey from The Times. Today, King Charles sends an olive branch to his estranged son. And this private gesture is leaked to the press. But the question is, by who?
Plus, Princess Charlotte and Prince George steal the show at Wimbledon Centre Court, where the Princess of Wales received a standing ovation. Let's begin with the big story of the week in what's been dubbed the Peace Summit. We've seen the pictures of the behind-the-scenes, or not so behind-the-scenes, attempt at reconciliation between the King and his second son, Prince Harry.
Through some of their aides, that's right. So pictures were published in a Sunday newspaper, which showed Tobin Andre, King Charles's and the Queen's Director of Communications, meeting with Meredith Mains. She's Harry's head of household and his communications officer who had flown over from Montecito, and Liam Maguire, who is Harry's UK PR representative. Now, they were all meeting at the King's Club, essentially, Royal Overseas League, of which he's patron. And while they were there were some uninvited guests.
There were some uninvited
guests. Or at least
guests.
one, paparazzi waiting in the bushes, who'd obviously been tipped off because he had pictures of them arriving separately. Harry's lot were already inside. Tobin then arrived, and then they were seen. They went out onto a balcony. Now, I was told, ironically, that was a decision made so they wouldn't be overheard inside. But then pictures of that meeting were revealed to the world, and it was dubbed the Peace Summit.
I mean, if there's one thing I've taken away from those pictures, and perhaps it's one thing that the King's press secretary might take away from it, and I'm sure I'll be hearing from him if he disagrees with this, knowing that he tunes into this podcast occasionally, it's, I suppose, if you want to have a very discreet meeting, a balcony is not always the best place looking onto a park, is it? Would be my suggestion. I know it was a hot day, and I know there might have been less ears around, but it's quite visible, isn't it?
It is quite visible if you're hiding in a bush in Green Park, but I think to most people it was just three people in suits having a chat. The question is who had tipped them off that it was happening beforehand and how that all came about. So let's unpack it, shall we?
So Meredith Mains,
Mains,
who is the newish sort of press supremo of Harry and Meghan's household, isn't she? She's the sort of the new chief of staff. And she was credited very much all over the BBC interview that Harry did straight after the court case that he lost against the Home Office. He gave this very impromptu, very emotional interview to the BBC where he talked about how he felt about losing that court case, how he said, I would love a reconciliation with my family. That phrase was used many times. I would love a reconciliation with my family, but I know some of them won't forgive me. And Meredith Mains was said to have pretty much set that up and been all over that.
But after that happened, Harry...
Didn't go so well, did it?
Well, Harry quit company or parted company with two of his PR aides, one who was based in LA, one who was based over here. And then in comes Liam Maguire, who he's known through his work with Blesma, the organisation for limbless military people, and he has known him for a few years, so he's now representing Harry. So it does seem like a new team, and they had reached out to the King's PR man, not William's. I'm told there was no attempt to contact William's team or William's office, and the meeting was arranged. And it's significant in itself because this is the closest they've got to some sort of kind of peace reconciliation or some sort of meeting around a table, a new open channel of communication was how it was described to me.
Just a channel of communication, I think, because there's been so little communication between both sides. I mean, the BBC...
As Harry said in that interview, my father won't talk to me.
The BBC interview, they got almost no advance warning of, other than from the BBC, which, I mean, they didn't get any advance warning from Harry's team that he was doing it or had done it. And I know from previous discussions from, with the palace that they've been not at all kept abreast of what he was doing in terms of overseas trips or significant projects that Harry and Meghan have done.
Yeah, the communication seemed to be based on a very limited range of when Harry was coming to the UK and had to alert Ravik.
Yeah.
That's when the palace would be involved. And it would normally be kind of private secretary to private secretary level. Well, we know what Harry thinks of the King's private secretary. He's not a big fan of Sir Clive Alderton.
What did he call him in Spare? The Wasp.
I think he was the Wasp.
He was the
There
Wasp.
was a few insects, but I think we decided that that's who he was referring to when he said the Wasp. So this is interesting because of this. Now, I've been told that for years Harry's been trying to make these meetings happen, but on the basis of the fact that he wanted an apology, and it was described to me as like untenable demands from the American side. So from Harry's side, it seems now that he's softened that desire for an apology, and that's where he's got as close as he can get now to having those meetings. And if you pick up on the BBC thing as well, like you said earlier, you know, he's saying some members of my family can't forgive me. It's the first acknowledgement we've had from Harry that actually it's them who need to forgive him and not him who needs to be demanding an apology from them. So that does seem, although he appeared quite petulant in that BBC interview, I think there is an acknowledgement from his side that this has changed. If he is desperate for the reconciliation that he says he craves, he is going to have to climb down. He's not gone as far as to say he's sorry for some of the hurt that he's caused.
Manage his expectations, hasn't he? Because it went from, I remember doing a story a couple of years ago where, just before Christmas, where the team around Harry, you know, told me, and it felt very personal to Harry and Meghan, that they wanted a summit.
Clear the Air Summit.
A Clear the Air Summit, an apology. They wanted a summit, they wanted an apology, and they wanted an invitation to Sandringham for Christmas. None of which was quite clear to everyone were ever going to be forthcoming.
Yeah.
So it has taken Harry a while to manage his expectations and to realise that his father and no one else in the royal family feel they have anything to apologise for. So you're right, it is a climb down, but it's the climb down I think he realises he needs to make in order to make some headway towards spending any meaningful time with his father again.
Who's been going through cancer treatment, as we know, and as Harry rather indelicately put it, we don't know how much longer my father's got left.
Yeah, the very
wasn't
fact
phrased in the right way, but obviously
No.
it's, you know, he says life is precious. He's thinking about how
Yeah.
that's playing on his mind.
I think my takeaway from discussions is that that Peace Summit might be slightly overblown. I know that's what this story appeared in the Mail on Sunday. It's how it was described. I think just a better relationship between both camps would be a start, particularly in terms of communications and knowing,
At least knowing what's coming up to bite them on the bum.
Exactly, and knowing what's coming up about it. And actually, I wrote a column about this a few months ago where I said keeping Harry at arm's length has not done the king any good. Keeping Andrew at arm's length, because you don't know what they're about to go and do, and you get blindsided.
That brings us on to the next point, doesn't it? Why was it leaked, and who looks good from it being leaked? Now, I would argue that
No one.
Well, I would argue actually the reverse, that both sides do look good, because it isn't a good look for the king that he refuses to see his son when he comes over. But most people don't know the backstory, that Harry's making all these demands and it's impossible for the king to see his son. He doesn't know what's going to be leaked, what's going to be on a primetime television interview, which to me seems a perfectly reasonable excuse to turn down a meeting. But it doesn't. To the general population, most people can't understand that he hasn't seen his son. So this does, you know, Tobin Andre, the King's Director of Comms, turns up with a bottle of wine as a gift. You know, it's a kind of a peace offering of sorts. So I think the King's lot do look good, and I think Harry's lot probably do look good as well, that they've made the effort to come over. I know that they were meeting lots of people, journalists and other people, during that short spell that Meredith was over in London. So I think it looks good on their part, that they're reaching out to the palace.
Do you think it was leaked by both sides then?
Well, no. Both sides claim. I'm saying who stands to benefit from it. But both sides claim innocence.
Yeah. As you would expect them to. Look,
it's not really the palace way of doing things to put paps in bushes.
No, they've fought a lot of legal battles against paps in bushes.
And as has Harry, right? So Harry's lot saying they're frustrated by it. I understand Harry is sanguine, was the word that was used to me about it, saying, well, this is just par for the course when it comes to me. And, you know, it sets us up for this week where we've seen him in Angola.
Yes.
As well.
The key thing, I think, about the other key takeaway from those pictures was that there was no communications secretary or representative from William's team, either private secretary or press secretary. And I think that gives a very clear insight into Harry's acknowledgement, and perhaps even Buckingham Palace and the King's acknowledgement, that as far as any kind of breakthrough with William is concerned, there at the moment, as things stand now, zero prospect of that.
Well, Harry's lot didn't even try.
And zero
didn't
desire
even,
from
yeah,
William's
didn't even.
side.
Or Harry's, I don't think. I mean, Harry probably knows that it wouldn't take place. They haven't even tried to reach out to them. I
suspect Harry is keen to make inroads there with his brother, more so than his brother is with him.
Oh, probably, yeah. Well, someone close to both the brothers described it to me this week, has said that without William's blessing, there can be no true reconciliation, which I thought was really interesting, because I think there can be some way of patching up that relationship with the king to some extent. But as a means to kind of securing any lasting connection to the family, obviously he needs to have William's support, but I just don't think that's likely anytime soon.
I think the best Harry can hope for is that when he's next here in September, he gets to see his father for more than 30 minutes, which is when he last saw him last January. That would be progress for Harry and the King.
But while this meeting does look to be progress, the fact that it's been leaked and it's all over the press, and clearly they had a tip-off beforehand,
could slightly set things back.
You know, it doesn't bode well for building that trust going forward.
No.
And it's going to make each side wary
of what comes out when he next is over.
Maybe it was a good old-fashioned tip, but, you know, there's only a few people who knew about that meeting.
We're getting our magnifying glasses out as we speak. And just pivoting a little bit, but still staying with Harry, he's been following in the footsteps of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, in Angola with the Halo Trust.
Looking very much like he was on a royal visit.
Looking like he was on a royal visit in Angola, reminiscence. Every time he goes to Angola, it is, of course, so reminiscent of those images of Diana, Princess of Wales, in Angola, walking through landmine territory with that visor on, representing the Halo Trust. And that was such a poignant joke because it was just before she died.
Yeah.
And, we last saw Harry in Angola in 2019 on that trip to Southern Africa, which I was on. And were you on that trip?
No, I wasn't on that one.
That was it was an interesting
Did you go
trip.
to Angola?
I didn't go to Angola. Only about 2 people when they got stuck there because all the flights were cancelled coming back. We did Southern Africa. He went to Angola on his own. Meghan stayed behind in Johannesburg and then on to Cape Town.
Because Archie was such a small baby.
He was very small. But it was really interesting talking to Harry and his team when he came back about following in his mother's footsteps.
And at that stage, he was the same age as his mother was when she made that same journey.
Yeah, it was.
35.
And every time he makes that pilgrimage to Angola, you feel the tug of the work he still feels he has to do in his mother's memory, the strong tug towards reminding people that he is his mother's son. You know, and when he first went off solo, when they set up their first website, you know, it said, "I am my mother's son," as if we need reminding. But it clearly, that work that she did and the messaging around it and the imagery around it is so resonant of the good stuff that Harry does, the stuff that he wants to be remembered for, the things that he wants people to see him doing actively out there, beyond Invictus, beyond the battles with the media, beyond the battles with the Home Office. And, you know, I think when you see him walking through the landmines, you know, in those images, you feel like that's Harry back in his natural home.
Yeah, and him meeting the president as well. I think it was interesting when Diana did that, because, of course, she was sort of on the outside of the royal family to some extent by that stage.
People had a go at her for being political, didn't they?
Yeah, Earl Howe said that she was a loose cannon to Her Majesty's government and that she shouldn't be doing that she was meddling with politics. But within a few months of her having done that, there was the Ottawa Treaty. Yeah. Over 100 countries signed up to...
She got it done.
To the treaty, exactly, to make sure that those landmines were no longer made and no longer used. So the fact that he's recreating this, I think, is all credit to him. And it couldn't have come at a more poignant time, I don't think, given that we've seen, you know, his charity Centre Barley completely disintegrate, really. And him and his co-founder, Prince Zizo, and all the trustees have walked, and that's in his mother's name.
Do you think that's linked slightly to the fact that, you know, we haven't seen him in Angola since 2019? This is just a sort of reminder of the charity I set up, and, you know, in my pretty much in my mother's name, has gone awry in a very public, very messy, toxic way. it's almost like he's sort of reminding us of, these are the other links to my mother that are still good and still work, and there's still work to do. I mean, there's been so many landmines cleared in Angola. That famous image of where she's walking through is now a really busy, bustling town. It was when he went back in 2019. But it's like he's reminding people of the good work that he still is able to do.
Yeah, I think so. I think rather than it just being a kind of cynical PR
Photo op.
PR photo op, I think probably these things are organised quite far in advance. If you want to get a team out to Angola, that it's probably not just a kind of a knee-jerk thing, is it? But he does seem to be making some headway, and I think you're right. This is where he can, add value, as they say, where he can remind everybody of his mother's legacy, talk about, cement his own, I suppose, in the same process. And again, he's not there with his wife. He's, a source has been saying to other reporters this week that
if he's not going to bring her
too
here,
dangerous.
he's not going to take her there.
Yeah.
But actually, I think it's, we increasingly see Harry and Meghan doing more and more work separately, and we're reminded, as people around them say, just because they're a married couple, they don't have to do every single engagement together, in the same way that William and Kate they very often do separate engagements. And I think for him, Angola, the Halo Trust, landmines, has always been his thing. He doesn't need Meghan there. There's sort of, the whole sort of sideshow that goes with that. I think it's more impactful just him on his own. It
is, and I think it's also the fact that this is still him posturing as a royal, isn't it? Very much so. We just talked about Meredith Mains, who is head of his household.
Yeah. Very hierarchical royal setup, isn't it?
It sounds very royal. And the fact that you go and you meet the president of a country and shake hands and do that kind of bilateral sort of meeting, and then you go off and do your engagements. He's still following the royal playbook, which is all this time on.
It's what he knows.
It's what he knows. He can't give it up, and that's why he needs it.
But he doesn't want to.
He can't. He physically cannot do it. He doesn't want to do it.
Give up the phrase household.
That's what we thought that he was going off to do 5+ years ago, but he hasn't stepped away from it. He's too ingrained in what he does, and actually this is what he wants to be doing. Now, moving to Wimbledon's Centre Court, where the Princess of Wales made a number of welcome appearances this weekend.
She did. It was very good to see her back, not once, but twice on Centre Court last week.
And with some pals in tow.
With some buddies in tow. Last year, we saw her just at the men's final. So she had that big come back at Trooping the Colour last year. And then we saw her at the Wimbledon men's final. Of course, she's patron of the All England Club, but she didn't come to women's final last year. This year, she went to both on Saturday and Sunday. And again, when she arrived on Saturday, got an unbelievable standing ovation from most people on Centre Court. And she walked on. She came solo that day. She came with her press secretary and her private secretary, Tom White and Lee Thompson. And she looked genuinely, it's interesting, she looks genuinely surprised and moved when she gets these standing ovations. And I suppose when you walk onto Centre Court and all those people rise to their feet and sort of applaud you just for being there, it must feel quite overwhelming. But I'm always intrigued to watch her response. And she looked she stood up and she sort of waved at everyone, and then the applause kept going. And she looked a little bit, she looked moved.
Yeah. It was a
lovely
response. William's been having a moment as well.
The interaction between William and George and Charlotte and Kate, in between each, when there were some mega points between Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner in the final, when William came with the kids as well. What I loved was the camera would go to the royal box and you could see William talking George through the point, sort of saying, well, that was interesting. And you could see them both, William and Kate, slightly coaching their kids via a Wimbledon men's final, which I love. And that's the ultimate tennis lesson, isn't it?
Well, he's had Federer around. Prince George has had lessons from Federer, hasn't he? And Mahal.
Gets Federer around. He gets President Obama to come round and hang out with him in his dressing
gym
gown.
jams. I mean, the day before the first Wimbledon appearance, so on Friday, we had William at the polo.
Oh, yes.
And the internet sort of broke down a little bit, didn't it? With the fans and the...
Oh, that
it was noted in our office that everybody online was saying how hot he looked. I don't think they were just talking about the temperature.
Were they not?
No.
We normally get that response when William appears in a helicopter with the blue beret and in his military fatigues.
Yeah, this is on that,
So this is Polo William.
Polo William.
Military
Polo Prince,
William. Polo William.
Military Prince, action man.
I feel like there's a line line of dolls here.
Yes.
Will's week in uniforms and polo gear.
This could be some branded merch, Roya.
I'm on it. How do we trademark? I think someone might have done it. Is my hunch, but
they both look. After the awful year they had last year, which he described as brutal and such like, they do seem to be coming out of it as a family, looking pretty happy and relaxed. Maybe that is a very good brave face they're putting on for the public, but it's certainly a convincing one.
I like what you've done there, particularly in polo gear. Finally, let's turn to the Queen. Well, Camilla was at Battersea Dogs and Cats Home earlier this week. She's a long-time patron, of course, and she's adopted lots of rescue dogs from there. But what really stands out is her visit to Devonport Naval Base in Plymouth, because she's made a bit of history. Camilla has become the first royal family member and first female royal family member to hold the title Vice Admiral.
She was down in Plymouth today where she was taking part in a ceremony for HMS Astute, which is the kind of flagship submarine, to celebrate the end of its first commission. It's the longest commission in Royal Navy history. And she was there to celebrate that, to commemorate that. Essentially, it's an attack submarine with nuclear capability. And she was awarded, drum roll,
fanfare.
She was awarded a roll of cling film.
What an honour.
On a special holder, so you can easily take it out.
With their perforated edges.
Yeah, because it's so annoying, isn't it, when you lose the end of it and it sort of wraps around. And
I bet that never happens for Royal.
It said first in class, second to none. And why did she get cling film? Well, she sort of mentioned it in her speech.
Niche.
It's a niche gift. There have been several niche
Do you think that
gifts.
will be disclosed in the next gift list next year?
I really hope so.
I do too.
Because it's going to be a highlight. In her speech, she said, within this ship's company, those extraordinary endeavours range from the innovation of one petty officer to code cutting-edge, long-range communication software through to the resourceful solution to maintain a vacuum in the middle of the Indian Ocean with cling film. So to commemorate this amazing feat of Royal Navy ingenuity, they have presented her with a roll of cling film so that she too may be able to do such feats. Or just wrap some stuff in her kitchen.
Do we think that's made it home with her to Ray Mill in Wiltshire, her private home in Wiltshire, and has been put on the kitchen counter? I really hope it has.
She looked really thrilled with it.
Because it's something she can use.
Well, it's a great talking point,
isn't
it?
Famously hates cling film.
Why?
Because it's plastic.
Unenvironmentally friendly. And you can get plastic-free stuff, but it doesn't actually work very well.
He has famously had quite major reactions to when he sees cling film. It's quite a notorious thing. It's not a myth. This is not a cling film myth.
Some made out of seaweed.
Almost certainly. Almost certainly. Well,
and if not, why not, William?
I'm not sure I've ever heard cling film mentioned in a royal speech before. Certainly not by a
queen. Sounds
like
a challenge to find.
Niche. Who knew? Anyway.
So there you go.
Congratulations, Your Majesty, on the appointment of the title of Vice Admiral and your cling film gift.
And congratulations, Your Majesty, on your birthday, which lands on the 17th of July, tomorrow. They have released a picture. Happy birthday to you. They've released a picture taken by Chris Jackson. Other photographers are available.
Former guest on this podcast, and it's a very interesting listen if you haven't listened to it, talking all about the King and Queen.
Nice pictures of her at Ray Mill, her private home, where she has everything her own way, and it's not
no
Charles's...
flunkies, no butlers, no
Charles's
valets.
place. It's her own house, let's say. And she actually is kind of imitating Princess of Wales. Remember when she did that Vogue cover, and she's sort of leaning over a kind of a fence in a field, looking very kind of chill. Is that
Camilla Chills?
Yeah, Camilla looking very natural.
There was a lovely another picture of her this week with her new dog Molly.
Yes,
we like to see Molly's progress
at Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, like you mentioned.
Exactly, Molly, who it turns out is all sorts of different breeds rolled into one.
Mischievous Molly.
Scruffs. She likes that. Mongrel. Yeah. She loves it. Well, that's it from us this week. A leaked royal summit, a standing ovation for Wimbledon's most devoted royal spectator, and Queen Camilla sailing into history as the Navy's newest Vice Admiral.
We'll be back next time with more royal headlines, more behind-the-scenes insights, and maybe another mysterious balcony meeting.
Until then, as the royal motto goes, keep calm, carry on, and if you're planning a reunion of your own, maybe don't do it on a terrace with a view.
In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch, we promise we won't leak it, or maybe we will, email us at theroyals@thetimes.co.uk. Thank you.
Bye, Kate.
Bye, Roya.